Okay, my friends, thank you for inviting me. I'm most grateful to you for the generosity of heart that made it possible for me to attend this conference in this ancient city with its pristine beauty, further enhanced by modern infrastructure. I will say kudos to Peter Jiboye, the head of the organizing committee. I consider this lecture to be one of the most important in my professional career because I intend to put you through some novel information. First, I have synthesized knowledge from Ken Wilber's description of the mind and thereby produced a comprehensive diagrammatic representation of the psyche in a way that is not yet found in the literature, and that's on slide 29. Second, I've synthesized what I consider to be Sigmund Freud's dream or hope by suggesting a brain representation of the structure and function of the mind. And how I did this was by situating the structure and function of the mind in the triple network model of Lennon, which is on slide 40. Thus bringing together the fields of cognitive neuroscience, phenomenology, psychoanalysis, psychotherapy, and psychopathology in slide 46. These two novel ideas will be the highlights of my presentation. But let's start from one of our Nobel laureates in psychiatry. There have been only just three. This is one of them, Mary Campbell of Columbia. He stated the main concern of this presentation, that psychoanalysis has entered the 21st century with its influence declining. And he said that this influence was regrettable because, according to him, psychoanalysis represents the most coherent and intellectually satisfying view of the mind. He also emphasized that the professional requirements for future psychiatrists will demand a greater knowledge of the structure and function of the brain than is currently available, even in most training programs in America. These ideas were written up in his landmark papers reviews in American Journal of Psychiatry. I always ask my students to go and read through these three papers if they are serious about psychotherapy. That is American Journal. It's referred here in 1998 and 1998. But his ideas, of course, follow from Sigmund Freud, and he was a psychoanalyst. Eric Campbell. He stated that, Freud stated that we must recollect that all of our provisional ideas in psychology will presumably one day be based on an organic substructure. He was interested in this organic substructure when he constructed what he called the idea of the project. And he thought that the deficiencies in our description will be more complete if there could be progress in physiology or biochemistry or both of them. And that was his idea, to find a brain representation of the psychic structure and psychic functioning and psychotherapy. This is my lecture outline. What I'm talking about really is in the field of developmental psychology. And we will go through quite a lot of points, the two main points being what I outlined here. It is important to understand the structure of the psyche or that aspect of consciousness that mental health practitioners are interested in. You can imagine a surgeon will not operate on a body without having a thorough understanding of the anatomy of the area that is operating in. Yet, we see people practice psychology and psychiatry and in a clinical sense, and they don't intend to know about the psychic structure. The best understanding of the psychic structure comes from the field of psychoanalysis, I said, from the Nobel laureate. And so, the neglect of that field, it is really unfortunate. Well, let's go to Freud's structural and topographical models. Initially, the understanding of the structure of the mind was from Freud's structural model, which focus on the ego and superego as elements of the mind, or personality as we call it. And then the topographical model, the two of them are actually interwoven in the diagram I will show you this. And according to him and his group, the dynamics of interaction between the structural and topographical models is used to understand psychological problems like psychopathology symptoms such as anxiety and depression, using conflicts between elements of the structural model within the unconscious and incorporating the dynamics of the defense. Let me unwrap. So let's start with the topographical model. So you have the conscious mind. Me and you are awake and listening to each other now, hopefully. And so Freud taught us that this aspect of the mind whereby we are awake and listening is only a tip of the iceberg. See, this is the iceberg, but this is the big part of the ice that is immersed, in the sea or in the water. So you have the conscious mind, the preconscious, and the unconscious. And the conscious level, he said, will consist of our thoughts, our conscious thoughts and perceptions, our preconscious or subconscious level will consist of our memories and stored knowledge, whereas our deep unconscious will consist of our fears, our urges, the kind of things we are ashamed that we've done, our selfish needs. So that's the topography, that is layers of the mind. As opposed to that, or in consonance with that, would there be what we call the products of consciousness, the things that actually are elements within the mind or the personality. So you have that. Again, you see the conscious level, the preconscious, and the conscious. So those three elements, you have the ego, the superego, and the id. Whereas the ego and the superego, they can function at the three levels, that is conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. The id is only functioning in the unconscious. And that statement I told you, I will see how it is. So, according to the psychoanalyst, this is their conceptual framework of psychotherapy, how the mental disorders arise. But this explanation really is for so-called psychoneurosis, which will come at a certain level of development, according to Ken Wilber. It's not there, it's not every time that in the stages of life you will develop neurosis. At the earlier stages, you have the disposition to developing other forms of mental disorders, which are more biologically rooted. So according to this theory, the fundamental basis of psychopathology is either a fixation at a level of development or a splitting or dissociation at that level. Drug addiction, for instance, people who have drug problems, they are viewed as being fixated at the oral stages of development. and the oral stages, this audience already knows what I mean by that. That's when you're a baby and their most concern is for what enters into your mouth. That is, this person's life energy is predominantly focused, or as they will say, targeted at satisfying the appetite. These people are orally driven. So up to this level, there are three broad psychopathologies. That's at the level that Wilber talked about, which I'll show you in subsequent slides. At the lowest level, you have psychosis or autism, borderline personality, such as narcissism, and then neurosis. So when the ego has been formed at say 15.3, as I will show you in the next slide, the unconscious conflicts can result in psychoneurosis in the following dynamics. That is, if you have the superego pressing down on the id, not allowing it to express itself, and this class knows the meaning of ego, superego, and id, so I don't need to go through that again. So this suppression of the id impulses by the superego will lead you to what is called the original neurosis, that is repression and inhibition. If on the other hand you have that the ego is not able to overcome the id impulses, so the ego is overwhelmed by the id, this will lead you to anxiety and obsessions. Whereas if you have a situation whereby the superego is able to, or doesn't allow the ego to express itself, this will lead to depression and anxiety and guilt. But let me explain further these elements: ego, superego, and id. For the other audience who may listen to this program, you find out what we mean by ego is that aspect of their personality that has to take a decision, has to deal with reality. In government setup, for instance, that would be like the executive arm of government. Then you have another aspect of the personality mind, which is to judge you, to restrain your impulses, to prevent you from doing whatever is wrong. We will put that as the, let's say, Department of Justice or the judiciary, Then you have the aspect of the personality that's always demanding, always wants you to give into something, usually things that are low, or restrained, wants everything. So that aspect of the personality we call the id, and you could relate that to the parliaments all over the world, whether states or national level. There's always demanding that the executive will do this or that, but the executive will have to see what it can do. That is as ego within the ambit provided by the law, which is the superego. So if you can understand this dynamics. Now, there are actually many ways that these theories have been formulated, and I've given you a link for at least 17 of them. There could be more. In this link that I've given you, there are actually 15 of them, but I've added Carl Jung and the Levinger's theories to this. The idea is that beginning from Freud, there have been attempts to understand psychopathology from a point of view of the biological development of the psychic structure as a child goes into adulthood. In other words, just like we have developmental stages in pediatrics, such as holding the head, sitting, crawling, standing. This is about the physical body, walking and talking. We are all familiar with this pediatrics. The psychoanalyst told us that there are also basic developmental stages in the psychic structure, and these are conceptualized by different theories. The neo-Freudians are those who conceptualize this theory from the point of view of culture and environment, whereas the more biological ones conceptualize it in a different, in such a way as if it is actually like the nervous system growing up to be able to hold the head and crawl and walk and talk. So you find what I'll do now is that I will actually in subsequent slides pick from these 17 theories and divide them into two. What I call the basic structure, actually Ken Wilber calls the basic structures as opposed to transitional structures. I will explain these terms. So these are the 17 theories I've given. Most of them are like what we call neo-Freudians. I told you neo-Freudians are people who look more towards the social and cultural aspects that affect development of the mind. So, but some of these people I've listed are actually biologists. So, what I've highlighted, the ones in bolder print, are what I'll call, or what Ken Wilber calls the basic stages. Example, Sigmund Freud and Jean Piaget, that is number 4 here, the cognitive developmental stages. Most of what I'm going to say really is based on these two. Sigmund Freud's psychosocial development combined with the cognitive developmental stages by Jean Piaget. Those are what Ken Wilber calls the basic structures. But there are also what he calls the transitional structures, and I'll explain what I mean by that. For instance, the hierarchy of needs by Abraham Maslow, that's number 10. The number 14, the Lawrence Kohlberg stages of moral development, and number 17, Jane Lovinger's sense of self and self-identity. So let's go to what Ken Wilber is saying. He's saying that in constructing what he called the full spectrum model, he said that a combination of the psychosocial and cognitive developments constitutes the basic structures of the psyche, which is what we know in conventional psychology, what has been elaborated. What has not been better elaborated is what I'm going to say next. Because he has looked into other models of psychology from the transpersonal world and has articulated 9 basic structures or stages. 6 of them are what he calls the pre-personal and personal levels, and 3 of them are the transpersonal levels, or what you may call spiritual levels, as you please. Now, as I said, Wilber also noted there are other types of development that the psyche undergoes, but which are more transitional in the sense that they can change, whereas the basic structures are more biological and stable. Let's unpack what that means. Examples of transitional structures are, as in the model of Abraham Maslow's and the hierarchy of needs, which people are familiar with, and Kohlberg's hierarchy of moral development. These structures are considered transitional. they are considered to be dependent on the stage at which you are. In other words, they are phase specific. They depend on where you are in the stages of the basic development. In the sense that they are based on the levels of that basic development. For instance, to develop self-esteem, you need to have grown up mentally to a level of what Piaget called formal operations, that level of formal operations. You can't have self-esteem if you are 1 year old, that's not your level yet. So you have to get to that level. So it is transitional. When you got there, you will now find out when you get to the level where you have self-esteem, you may find that circumstances could change, and what you consider to be so important is no longer important, and you look at self-esteem in order to gain some selfish motives, in order to fulfill some selfish motives. So this level of morality or esteem you have developed at the earliest stage can actually, evaporate in the face of adverse circumstances of life. Whereas those other basic structures, levels of development, they are there with you. They are biologically rooted. So that's the difference between the basic structures and the what do I call it, and the transitional structure. So that's why you commonly find, this example I saw in the last time I visited the University of Ibadan, we were coming out from the gate, and the gate man was trying to stop people so that cars can move in an orderly manner. So he expected that people, being professors, being highly educated people, they would obey simple rules. They would. They have grown to that level. But you see, this was a rush hour. Vehicles were jamming everywhere, and they were not listening to you. Say, you said in Yoruba, all you people who are so-called educated, you can't even obey rules. So that's the example that even when you are educated and you know the rules, you should obey them. But when circumstances change, when you think you can escape, you disobey. You will do wrong things. So that sense of morality, obedience that we expect from you as an educated person is what Wilber calls a transitional structure. It doesn't stay with you all the time. It depends on circumstances. Whereas the more basic levels, they stay with you all the time. Now, Ken Wilber has also put forth what he called the idea of self-system, and I will explain this, which operates on the basic structures and transitional or immediate structures. This is more like when we were, studying psychiatry. We still study psychiatry, but I mean as students. We had the discussion of the functions of the ego. Now we put it together as parts of functions of the mind. And I put up a diagram, my own representation of this in order to guide us. So you have self-identity and will, organization, defense, metabolism, and navigation. I will explain this in a diagram. So, but this is what he sees as representations or functions of the mind. So the mind has an aspect of it that you will always know who you are, and you want to get back to who you are. But there's an aspect of the mind with which you assert yourself, with which your motivations are channeled into, and that's the will. But you also have an aspect of the mind with which you organize the day. You know you have to wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, have a bath, maybe pray if you are such a human being, and then take your breakfast, go to work and all that, after bathing, of course. And then, so that's the one that organizes your day, your life. So there's an aspect of the mind that functions with that. There's also an aspect of the mind with which you defend yourself. For instance, when you are assaulted, when people try to run you down or do you in, you try to defend yourself. You mount a defense. In psychoanalysis, this defense is often conceptualized as happening in the unconscious, as I told you. But this is called ego defense mechanisms. They are very well known, characterized by this group. But then there's an aspect of the mind which he called metabolism. Now this is the real mind you think of. That's the one that thinks, the one that is all over the place, you know. Anything that happens, sensation, news, anything, you think about it. He calls that metabolism. You go through it. Then there's the aspect of the mind with which you mount the stages of development. He calls that navigation. In other words, he distinguished 6 aspects of mental functioning. Remember, all these things function together. It's just we try to split them up in order to have a better understanding. But in reality, they function together. The point is, scientists are very good at breaking things into small portions, which we can then study and do business with. So, his group, they added the insight that whereas virtually all the theories, those 17 people, or theories ended at what we call the functions of personal development, e.g., formal operation of Piaget, or Maslow's self-actualization. These are the peaks of those theories. Ken Wilber is saying that the personality actually has the potential to grow towards what is called the transpersonal level, or some people may wish to call spiritual levels, whichever way. The earliest conception of this transpersonal self in conventional or Western psychology is found in William James' book, Varieties of Religious Experience. That idea has now entered conventional psychology with journals devoted to it, like Journal of Transpersonal Psychology. This is an attempt to bring scientific rigor into a field that is easily dominated by superstitious beliefs, fundamentalism, and mysticism. So, borrowing from the psychology of wisdom philosophy from the Eastern world, they have suggested that if you end the quest of psychological growth at the personal level, that is, for instance, Maslow's self-actualization, if that is all you are aiming at doing, you are actually foreclosing the attainment of the higher potentials of man for higher consciousness. For instance, a child who just gets to the level of talking and doesn't want to get up beyond that, or gets to the level of walking but doesn't want to get to the level of running. You see, you are actually foreclosing further attainment of higher states of even physical functioning. So they are saying that psychological growth does not or should not end at, for instance, Abraham Maslow's self-actualization, and so on and so forth. And this was articulated in their book, Transformations of Consciousness. I think people should get to read this book. It's really transforming in my own consciousness. Okay? So I'm going back to describing the basic structures of consciousness, and from there I will tell you about the various aspects of the mind. I'm trying to unpack Ken Wilber's description of the basic structures of consciousness as related to the transitional structures. This thing needs going through. So it's like climbing through the rungs of the ladder. So you find that when you are born, 0 years of age, to 1 year, you are functioning as a sensory motor, as Piaget would call it, sensory physical. What concerns you is the realms of matter, sensation, and perception. This is biological. You have to go through that. That's what your nervous system can carry. But then, soon, elements of the mind and emotion start growing. And you have the fantastic emotional. This is talking about mind tinged with emotion. The emotional and sexual level, the lower or image mind, the simplest form of mental filtering, where this person is using only images. So babies at this stage, we just show them images more. Then you come to the representational mind, or Piaget's pre-operational thinking. Piaget is the one really who describes this stage well. That it develops in 2 stages. We have to understand what we mean by symbols and concepts in this way. So if you take an image, for instance, it represents a specific object, like a tree. So you bring up a tree and show a child, this is a tree. That's an image. But you want the child to go beyond that just image. You want the child to be able to carry a more efficient description. That's a symbol. So you tell the child, look, this tree can be represented not just by the tree itself, but by a word called tree, T-R-E-E, of that object, which doesn't look like it. The word T-R-E-E doesn't look like a tree. It's a symbol. So the child has to get to that level, and I'll tell you how we are doing it. But a concept is a wider representation of the object. So, for instance, the concept of a tree encompasses all types of trees with roots, stem, branches. It's no longer just tree. And that's how we teach children in the kindergarten to spell apple. We say A is for apple, B is for this. So that's what you are grappling with. You are grappling with somebody who has a representational mind, and that is simply what their nervous system is. So rule mind, this is what Piaget called concrete operational thinking. Can perform rules such as multiplication. Then you come to Piaget's really highest level, formal operation, where this person can now think properly, can introspect. And that's where Piaget stops. But Ken Wilber is saying that there's also the level of vision logic, where this person can not just introspect, but philosophize. So you have the philosopher's mind. This is beyond Piaget's formal operational level. Then the pre-transpersonal level, the psychic, this marks the beginning of the transcendental, first functional or contemplative development. The telepathic mind, the intuitive mind. Then there are other levels, the subtle, the causal. These ones are no interest to us because they are too high for us. So let's just keep them for the future. Then you have the self system, which I described to you, the 6 parts of them, that you have proposed that if you look at the mind, you have the one self-identification, This is the locus of, I'm going to put up a diagram that is, but I just want to give you the theory as a constraint so that you will be able to understand me further when I now put it in the diagrammatic form. So what it means to say I or me is located as a representation of the self system. As I said, these things function together. And I described the organization, the one that gives you, puts your day, in a streamlines your day so that you are organized, you can understand you. And then you have the one that makes you to have a free choice, to assert yourself or determine to go away. Then the one that defends you, when you have problems, you have to defend your self-esteem. And so, then metabolism, the one that actually thinks. I'm giving more details of what I've said in earlier slides. And then the one that navigates, that grows. For instance, at the physical level, the one that grows from sitting to crawling to standing to walking and to running and talking. So also in the side of the mind, the one that goes from what we call sensory physical level of sensory to the higher levels of psychological function. So what we find is that the example is that the self is like someone climbing a ladder. And that ladder is, the rungs of it are the basic structures of existence, so that you move from concern with matter, that's the sensory physical, to the body, to the emotion, like when we say fantastic emotional, to the mind, and to soul and spirit at the transpersonal levels. So that's what is happening. At each stage, there's a danger of pathology. It's either you get fixated at that stage, like when you are fixated at the oral stage, then you have drug addiction. Or you are not able to differentiate yourself from the environment, or actually you deteriorate. So there are three elements in the self-seek structure, and I want to use the metaphor of the ladder. So you have the basic structures. If you take a ladder, for instance, so if you conceive the psyche as consisting of a ladder with a climber, so there is a ladder and there is somebody who is climbing on that ladder. All of us know that any ladder is made up of rungs or steps. So the basic structures of that ladder in the mind, they constitute the rungs of the ladder. So you have the sensory physical, fantastic emotional, and all that. These are biologically rooted. These are steps you must climb up. Then there are the transitional structures, which actually consist of, in this example, the views you may have of the world. For instance, when you are at a higher level of functioning, you view the world at a certain level of morality. But that level of morality can shift, as I said, depending on circumstances. And also, that level of morality can actually be improved upon, like James Levinger taught us, as you climb the ladder of development. So, these transitional structures, as I said, that is your needs, your basic needs, your moral tendencies and all those things. They change with time. They can improve or actually deteriorate depending on the situation. These things, using the example of the ladder, we call them the views you hold at each level, each rung of the ladder. So, as opposed to these rungs of the ladder, there is a self-system or self-structure which is the one actually taking the steps, climbing the ladder. So that if you use the method of 4-4 with me, you find that each level of development represents some food you are taking. Is it a physical food, emotional food, mental food, or spiritual food? What is your concern? What are the kind of values, the kind of things that concern you, preoccupy your mind? These represent your level of development. And if that food, that level of development is not properly digested, is not properly integrated into you, is not properly understood, then there is psychic challenge. So to make those stages, which I'm going to elaborate upon in a diagrammatic form more, I'll give you something which you are not, this class of psychiatrists is familiar with. This is Ken Piaget's sensorimotor, which is from this age, the point is object permanence. And if you saw in the book by Gilgard, Atkinson, and Atkinson, which we read when we were doing primary in UR, it was really very great. You see a child, when the child is playing with an object, you remove it. He forgets the object. But at a certain stage, when you remove it, he starts crying for it. In other words, the goal here is to develop object permanence. Object permanence means the object exists once you have known about it, whether it is in your front or it has been removed. It is not given. You get to the level where an object is permanent. Okay? And once you have achieved that, you have achieved that. So the pre-operational level, like I was saying, symbolic thought using the image of a tree. I have given you the example of this already. Concrete operational, which means you can do arithmetic, but not yet algebra and geometry. You remember when we were in school, you did arithmetic when you were in primary school. But once you got to secondary school, you are beyond 12 years of age, and you should be. We send children there now earlier, so they have problems. So that's when you can start to grasp the idea of algebra, geometry, and calculus. The formal operational, which I've already, that's a high level. You're now adult. You can do scientific reasoning. This is a very cut down, simpler presentation than Ken Wilber's highly elaborate paper. And that is Ken Wilber's highly elaborate. So you find that sensory physical, that is stage 1 or stage 1 as you will call it, phantasmic emotional, representational mind, role mind, formal reflective, vision, logic, psyche. These are the various stages now broken down beyond Jean Piaget. I'll give you a more dramatic twist now. That's you find the breakdown so that from stages 1 to this, that's where you find the pre-personal growth. That is before you become fully conscious of yourself as even an adolescent. And when you grow, so that's the pre-personal level. When you grow more, then you have the role mind, as I said, where you can do formal operations like arithmetical calculation, up to the point where you are able to, reason as an adult. That's personal. Then the transpersonal levels, psyche, subtle and cognitive. Just ignore these other areas, but it's to show you, because we don't know what any of you will think tomorrow. Somebody will come who will then be interested and elaborate on this event. Why I'm showing this is that Ken Wilber has said that it is very wrong to stop psychology, stop teaching psychology at this level. at the personal level. You should also teach psychology at the growth is also present at the higher levels. So these are ones in green, and I put them in green color to show that they are of the earth. They are of the earth, they grow. See, the ones in yellow are now what we call the transitional structures. The various levels of Maslow's basic, hierarchy of needs, or Lawrence Kohlberg's moral development, there are also stages, up to 8 of them or so, depending on whom you are talking about. So that's why I put them in yellow, in the sense that they are transitional, but they are there, and they drive us forward or into trouble, depending on how much we have absorbed them. So what I've done here now is to tell you the origin of these thoughts in me, actually. I pay tribute to my time in the Brown Hall of University of Ibadan UCH. That's where I got these ideas, the idea of man know thyself, and I shall know the universe. It has been a quest of my life, really, to get to know the diagram I'm going to show you next now. That's following the Delphic injection. In the halls of an Brown Hall, I was actually reading a lot by then. I was, you could say, learned. So I was reading philosophers like René Descartes. I think therefore I am. So these things have haunted me, they have driven me, and I'm coming down now to give you a synthesis of where I've been in this journey, right from when I was a medical student in the halls of an Brown Hall. So that's where you are now. I'll give you a more colorful presentation of this. Is my own synthesis from Ken Wilber. Recall that Ken Wilber told us that there are basic structures and that there are transitional structures. So I'll put them this way. What I've done here is to put forth something like a body. We understand the idea of a physical body, but we don't understand the idea of a psychic body. So I've represented that. The initial idea that actually came to me was when you have a pulse, with which you put, the one that women carry, and it has a hinge at the center, and you close it and you open it. That idea came to me. So there are parts that are related, but different. So you have the basic structures, like we mentioned, starting from sensory physical, phantasmic, emotional, and so on and so forth. Till this point, so all these points from this level of consciousness, personal to personal, then the higher levels of consciousness. So I have conceived that there is a basic structure that is in two parts. The pre-personal to personal, that is the one we all understand. And also what you might call the transpersonal or spiritual, whatever you want to call it. But it means that there are higher levels. I'm saying that, following Ken Wilber, these are also biologically rooted. They are biologically rooted. As the last slide, I will synthesize these ideas. So these are the basic structures. You climb through them in stages, and you go up from the pre-conscious through the conscious mind and through the transpersonal mind. Then these are views. These are the transitional stages you have, like you know best about Maslow's levels: physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness needs, up to self-actualization. But now Ken Wilber is adding self-transcendence. So you become let's say spiritual. Let's say you add a higher dimension to your life. So these are transitional stages, and we say that it's like being on the rung of the ladder and having a view in this direction. But then this is the self that climbs. This one that is around the dome of this structure. So at that dome, you have the self-identity, your sense of identity of yourself. You also have your sense of will. And part of that, you also have your capacity to organize your day and your capacity to defend yourself from, people attacking you or whatever. And then you have the part of you that we are more familiar with, the one that thinks. When the Descartes, I think, therefore I exist. Cogito ergo sum. This is a metabolizer. And then the one that actually navigates, the navigator. So you find that what happens here is that there is the I am the one, me, and all that. And that I is the same one. You know yourself when you were 6 years old in Greek. You can remember from then, or maybe earlier, to when you are an adult now. It's the same mind that's active, the same point I. When you are dreaming, when you are asleep, you also recognize yourself. And it's the same I that you may call the transpersonal or the God in you or whatever. It's the same I represented all through, but having as its agent the mind that is functioning on top. Let's put this in a more colorful that, and that's what you have here. So it's clearer here. The basic structure, pre-personal to personal, and the basic structure, transpersonal. And these are the views. So these are the stages, the steps of the ladder. These are the views. That is Abraham Maslow's stages, or Lawrence Kohlberg's moral stages, or Jane Levinger's sense of self, depending on which transitional structure you want to put here. So these are the levels of consciousness. When you were a baby, that's the pre-personal before you become matured, to now when you are supposedly matured, that's the personal, and to when you become, let's say, a master of the wisdom, like has always impressed me. I've always wanted to be a master of the wisdom. So now you have the sense of yourself, the one that thinks or has ambition, and that's it. Self-identity, the will with which you carry on, insist on what to do, like insisting to record this lecture, despite all the disadvantages. Nepa has taken life, I'm sweating like a dog here, but I insist on making this record. And then the metabolizer. So I'm using the wheel, doing all this, and I'm taking away all distractions, from me. And that's the wheel that helps me to do that. And then the self that says, this is your job, this is your duty, it's your karma. Then the one that climbs, the navigator. I don't know whether you can see this well. I have to thank two of my patients. I can't name them, but they were the ones who drew this. Believe me, my patients in my private hospital. I'll just call them B and N, as initials of their names. They are the ones who put up this diagram. I'm not able to put up this diagram at all. That is, I drew a sketch of what I wanted. Then they used Microsoft Word and got off drawing. I don't know how they did it, but they gave me this, and I'm very thankful to them for having been my star patients. One of them actually had transited, the one I call M, to becoming a staff of the hospital. And so that's how I relate with my patients. I thank them very much. Anyway, Of the two novel ideas I was telling you, this is one of them. That is putting up a diagrammatic representation that is not yet available in the literature. How does the psyche look as a body? This is my conception. And this conception has grown from the time I was a medical student at the University of Ibadan to now when I'm over 70. So you can imagine the more than 50-year journey to be able to put up this diagram. I thank God for that and the opportunity to present this. So as I said, we have to know that I'm not saying that this is how the self appears. It is only an intellectual model which has actually been a preoccupation of mine from when I was a medical student. I have always wanted to build an intellectual model of what I call the mystical reality. How you are up there when we are not able to see you with our eyes, when we are in our sightless substances. Okay, so I will go on to the second novel idea. I presented the first one, which is the diagrammatic representation. I now present the second novel idea. Freud always thought as a neurologist. All that he told us in method of psychotherapy, like free association, was actually how he saw the nerves, freely associating. And that's what happened. However, in his book, or in the story of his book that I saw in this our Bible of Psychiatry, the American Bible, as we call it, in the first edition there was actually the diagram. It's not available anymore. How he drew a complex diagram of the relationship between the mind and the brain. It's complex, nobody could understand it, but it has inspired me, and I've thought how we could put it together, how we could unravel it. And this is the concern of the field of cognitive neuroscience. Cognitive neuroscience in the modern era is about the way of presenting the mind in the brain, the mind and behavior in the brain. Okay? So let's see this. How it goes, the latest is from a man in California, one of these great universities, Junior Lennon, put up a paper which I have a reference somewhere here, about the default mode network. In other words, he's saying that the mind is actually situated in the following way. There is a default mode network. This is a system in operation. I'll show you the diagram, so don't worry. It's in operation when the individual is at rest. For example, when you are in the gantry of MRI, and this state is probably equivalent to the theta and alpha waves of EEG. It is likened to the sense of self-identity. The salience network we are more familiar with, because there was a time in DSM-4 when it was thought that schizophrenia should be described or labeled as a disorder of aberrant salience, that is, inability to choose what to attend to in the stimuli that are bombarding your senses. So this is a network that's in operation where I have to choose which stimuli to attend to. And to me, it can be likened to the will. That's the will. And then the executive network, where we are more familiar with this again when we talk about executive functions. And I think it can be likened to Ken Wilber's metabolism. So these three networks, I'll give you the grammatic representation. So we find that the harmonious function of these core networks is what gives rise to the complex phenomena of the mind in the brain. So that in conclusion, to me, the fulfillment of Freud is to merge insights from cognitive neuroscience, that is this simple network, and Weber's full spectrum model. So, representing psychoanalysis of the mind, modern neurology or psychotherapy. And this is in the paper by Mellon. This is it's a whole pull-out. It's a complex paper, but at least you can understand the abstract of the conclusion of all it is too much. It's a large paper. Can you imagine 483 to 506 pages? So these are the diagrams. We look at the default mode network and the salience network. In the next diagram, I will include the executive network. So we are not talking about nuclei that are on their own. We are talking about nuclei functioning in concert. They are working together. So the default mode network consists of functioning together the medial prefrontal cortex. You are more familiar with the basolateral prefrontal, but that's for executive network. Combining with posterior cingulate the posterior cingulate area and the right and left parietal areas. So they combine, they work together. It is a network. In other words, these large nuclei are actually centers of synthesis of the sense of self and all that. There you have the salience network. That consists of anterior cingulate and the right and left anterior insula. So hold it in mind once again. The default mode network consisting of medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate, and the left and right parietal. So this default mode network encompasses, as I said, all these, as well as the supplementary brain regions, including temporal areas. And this default mode network is a relatively new concept. It's a recent concept outside. And because of this, there is not a complete consensus on what brain regions should be included in the definition. So we'll get more out of this as time goes on. Regardless, structures that are generally considered part of the that network are here as I've already stated. So I actually got this from the Wikipedia, and if you're online, you can go and get it. So you are free to know more. It's known to be involved in many seemingly different functions, but basically it is the neurological basis for the self, your memories and your recollections of yourself. So referring to traits and descriptions of oneself. Emotion of yourself, your theory of mind, that is how you think of others, what you might call social intelligence and emotional intelligence. So as I said, emotions of other people, understanding the emotions of them. In other words, what we call these days social intelligence and emotional intelligence and moral reasoning and social evaluation. Too many of them just remember the major function self-identity. Now this is a more familiar area, what we call the central executive network. It's involved in sustained attention, complex problem solving, and working memory. I've described it. The salient then but the salience network facilitates switching between this central executive and what they call default mode network. In the diagram I'll show you below. So that in psychodynamic terms, the executive function nuclei could be described as the executive branch or the synthetic ego. The salience network, now I've already told you, the insular and the cingulate cortex. It's involved in detecting and filtering salient stimuli, so that in schizophrenia, for instance, we are told what is happening is that the capacity to know that the voice you're hearing is not actually important in terms of your reality, but it's happening to you, and you fail to make that judgment of salience. So also your thoughts, your thinking, you have delusional ideas, and you are not able to know that these ideas coming from you are not salient with respect to your reality function. So, and so on and so forth. These are okay. So you have the salience network that chooses between the default mode network and the central executive what to do, what to choose. Like Hamlet, to be or not to be, what is salient, what should we respond to. And I've said consists of anterior cingulate cortex and then the insula, whereas the default mode network consists of the medial prefrontal cortex and also the posterior cingulate and the lateral parts of the parietal, whereas central executive network consists of the basolateral prefrontal cortex and all these other nuclei I've mentioned. So this is a diagram that synthesizes the triple network system. So what do we do from there? I've told you what Sigmund Freud has said. He was looking for a position or understanding from physiology or chemical that will help us to understand the functioning and the structure of the mind. And here we are. Here we are, that the triple network is now situated, is now the one that situates, that houses this function. You can speculate on the following relationship. Now the salient network seems to fit in the brain as the brain correlates of the wheel and the navigator, like I've mentioned to you in the earlier diagram from novel idea 1. Whereas the executive network seems to mediate the metabolizer, the organizer, and defense. And the default mode network mediates the sense of self, the sense of identity. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really the peak of the presentation, where I told you I intended to produce 2 novel ideas to you. So this is the second one, where we situate the structure and function of the mind in the structure of the brain. So actually this idea is a broader one, because there are models of schizophrenia, depression, anxiety within the triple network model. This is more on the psychopathology side. And this is inspiring personalized psychopharmacology, which is the current goal of genetic human genetics, the genomics. We want to have what we call personalized needs. The salience network is more known, as I said, for schizophrenia. The executive network is more operating. I'm now talking about relationship with psychopathology. So relationship with housing neuroses and mood disorders. Whereas the default mode network is thought to house dementia and autism. So this is a diagram that puts it together. So you have the salience network mediating the will and motivation. Remember I told you that it's those my patients who drew this diagram. I just had my idea, sketched it on paper, and then they looked inside Microsoft Word and put this together. I've continually thanked those my patients, creative individuals who were foolish enough to be involved in drug addiction. But they are good children. So the executive network is housing the metabolizer, organizer, and defense, whereas the default mode network is housing self-expression. So what is the value of these insights in psychotherapy practice? Well, psychotherapy is what we are is inspiring us to inspire this lecture. We have to achieve a deeper psychodynamic understanding of the patient based on individual's level of psychological development, so that if we want to treat personality disorders and identity confusion, we have to be able to understand the person's developmental level, so as to be able to formulate a more individualized therapy instead of the one-size-fits-all model that we have, for instance, in cognitive behavior therapy. Incidentally, these therapies, the vast majority of them, CBT and all that, they are what Ken Wilber calls uncovering techniques. Why do you mean that? Because the basic idea is what I told you, that there is a repression. The superego forces the id to repress memories and not allow them to bubble up to consciousness. And that may lead to anxiety or what do I call it? Obsessions, if you find that the id overwhelms the ego, or depression if the superego, overwhelms the ego. So you have depression and guilt. So these are, when you engage them in psychotherapy, you try to uncover, to go into the unconsciousness, to bring up these materials that have been repressed, bring them to the surface, the sunlight, and let the person understand them. And then the process of CBT goes on. So we call these uncovering techniques. These are different from when you are dealing with a person who has, for instance, borderline personality or narcissistic people, as we have on the world stage right now. We have people who are really narcissistic on top there. How do you deal with them? They don't have an unconscious. They are very open in what they want to see and what they want to do. And it's all about themselves. They are very, demanding. Demanding that their own impulses are what must be. So you are not uncovering anything. They've told you everything. They've told you their basis. Ken Wilber says that these people, they did not come up to building up that level of the ego. So your job really is to build them up so that they have a safe ego. The ego that they have as it is are really very half-baked and dangerous. So you have to build them up and get them to, become nice person, kind, compassionate, instead of wicked and selfish. So the uncovering techniques, we use them in CBT because we are trying to uncover something in the unconscious which has been repressed. But as I said, it's a one-size-fits-all model because people who have personality disorder, like narcissistic people, they don't have that unconscious. They didn't repress anything. Everything is in the open. You need to be So that will be our final slide actually, to show that what we have done is to put together the field of phenomenology led by John Husserl. That is, these people, they are philosophers, but their preoccupation with perception, their preoccupation was with perception as philosophical inquiry, using the methods of what I call EUA, empathy, understanding, and observation. I've also linked psychoanalysis and developmental psychology. That's Sigmund Freud and the neo-Freudians, and Ken Wilber's truth-taking development, where he says that the self climbs a ladder of basic structures and transitional structures. Okay, so you have to have your psychotherapy based on understanding of the level that this person is in their developmental psychology. So you have psychopathology, which is what psychiatrists in this book are doing. You are studying abnormal perception. Remember that phenomenologists are not interested in abnormal perception, except of course Carl Jaspers, who was a psychiatrist too, and introduced the idea of psychopathology, general psychopathology. So you have psychopathology dealing with abnormal perception, abnormal mood, abnormal thoughts, and related abnormal behavior. All these are housed in the triple network model of Zinot-Menon, the default mode, the salience mode, and the executive mode. They house the psyche and the psychopathology. Thank you, thank you, thank you.